Okay, so gonna kick this video off by apologizing in advance for being very verbose. So in this video, I talk about more on the nuts and bolts side of injury nutrition. Like, what are the things that you should be considering? What are the questions that you're actually asking? So I talk about that in this video. In the next video, I'm going to do a what I eat in the day for where I am in my injury, which is currently recovering from PRP. So I promise at some point in the future, I won't just sit and talk to you on the camera, but right now, that's pretty much where I am with my injury, is being immobile. So thought I would try and answer your questions about injury nutrition, and if you have more questions, drop them down below, give it a like, a subscribe, and thanks for joining me on episode 2 of Don't Call It a Comeback. Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. Injury and weight gain. This is obviously like a super touchy subject for a lot of people. I think that a lot of people are neurotically afraid of gaining weight when they're injured. And people do gain weight when they are injured. Obviously, we're not out there running every day. Some injuries you can't exercise at all. Like, I have been able to exercise until I got PRP, and now I can't exercise at all. This is complicated. It's complicated because, yes, when you're injured, you're not burning as many calories. However, if you don't eat enough when you are injured, you won't heal. Having insufficient calories when you are healing will prolong healing, it will inhibit healing. So I think that there's a couple things in this that are really important. One, if you don't have a great relationship with food and nutrition in your active life, if you have neuroticisms or disordered eating, those things are going to get ugly when you are injured because you don't have the ability to exercise. I feel like that's part of where this whole stigma comes from, is that like a lot of the examples that we're seeing are people who don't have healthy relationships with food in the first place, like bringing that into injury, right? For me, I have a good relationship with food. I have found that during injury, I have not had any issue with adjusting my intake naturally. I have less of an appetite. On days I work out and doing new things, like different types of exercises, I have been super hungry. And so instead of thinking about, well, I'm not doing as much as I normally do, I'm like, oh, I'm hungry today. So I eat. The focus with my eating is getting enough protein and enough calories, because both of those things are super important in injury recovery. Like, you can lose weight. If you gain weight when you're injured, you can lose that again, right? You would prefer to have some weight gain than to undereat when you're injured. Like, hands down, science supports it, right? Like, there is no benefit from undereating when you're injured. Like, it's a super dangerous game, and I think it also sets you up for like further bad habits even after you transition back in. I understand that our sport is a hotbed of, issues around food, nutrition, neuroticism, like a lot of disordered eating. Yes, we are in a sport that like weight influences the outcome, but when it comes to injury, we can't focus on maintaining our weight and also focus on healing. That's just what it comes down to. Like, it is natural when you are changing your activity level so extremely for your body to change, right? You're going to lose muscle. You might gain fat. But in the end, your choices around nutrition should be about healing, not about weight maintenance. Okay, so one of the things that I've done in terms of my nutrition while dealing with this injury is I checked in with my blood work, especially when we didn't really have a good idea of what was going on. It was really important to kind of like turn over every possible stone. Now that we know it's a bone stress injury, I think it's even more important to check in with those factors, because nutritional deficiencies can obviously contribute to bone stress injuries. I've been working with Inside Tracker for several years, and so mid-January I went in for a test with Inside Tracker to check what my levels are across a whole host of blood panels, to kind of check in to see if there was any obvious deficiency. And I got my blood work back, and I did have extremely low vitamin D. So vitamin D is essential in bone health, and mine was just completely tanked out. Like, my graph is pretty consistent over time, just like boop, 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 and this one's just straight off the bottom. Thankfully, my calcium is good, but checking out the app, my magnesium was also low, my B12 was low, my cortisol was too high. So, as I proceed, over the last couple of weeks, since I've gotten those results, I've really focused on raising those levels. So some of those things, Inside Tracker has given me suggestions on ways I can incorporate that through food, since that would be my primary way of wanting to change my nutrition. Some of those things, like the vitamin D levels, I am addressing through higher supplementation, because we would like to get that level back up and pretty quickly, so that my bones can heal. Because we're thinking about two things here. We're thinking about long-term bone health, and we're also thinking about like the healing of the stress fracture itself. I would like to be doing everything possible right now to be building back up versus breaking back down. So I'm actually on Friday going into my GP's office to get more blood work done, because I would like to check in now in a month. And I am actually going to probably do a wider panel of things, just in case there's some other kind of like outside markers that might be necessary to address. But I think it's just, injuries don't happen in isolation. Yes, like spraining your ankle probably doesn't have that much to do with your nutrition, but it could. I mean, the health of your body is dependent on your nutrition, and so I think that is something that during injury is like really, really important to focus on, right? Like, if you have things that you have been struggling with or your body is lacking, that will definitely show up in injury and illness. So I think, the reason why I share this as part of nutrition while injured is I think that this is the perfect time to focus on that and to kind of be like, am I going the right way? Am I eating enough? Am I, getting a wide variety of foods? Is my body responding to what I'm giving it? So I think that, using tools like Inside Tracker is super helpful. I also think that everybody benefits from working with a nutrition coach. I worked with a nutrition coach a couple years ago. I found it really helpful. I actually found out at that time that my general diet didn't really have enough carbs because I'm gluten-free and I have had stomach problems my whole life. I don't generally eat a lot of carbs because when I started being gluten-free, you know, in the mid 2000s, all gluten-free food tasted like crap. So I wasn't really like into starchy carbs. And so working with a nutrition coach, I found out how much better I felt when I actually did incorporate some of those carbs back. So I think that that's super valuable. Interestingly, you know, with recovery, the thing that I'm focusing more on is protein. So protein is really important for injury healing. Okay, so one of the things that I think needs to be addressed when it comes to nutrition and injury, obviously I'm talking a lot in this video about what your nutrition looks like while you're injured, but I do think that when you're injured, one of the things that you have to do is take stock of whether or not your injury could be nutrition related. So with a lot of bone stress injuries, I think that that is one of the primary things that should be considered. I actually had the experience of having this concern and wondering, you know, is my bone health having an issue? Because before I had really strong bones. I had a DEXA scan a couple years ago. I don't purposefully undereat. I am really on top of my nutrition. I feel like I'm doing pretty good in that department. So to have a stress fracture in a place that is very hard to break is concerning to me about bone health. I actually brought this to my doctor, and she just blithely pushed it to the side and said, no, this is just an overtraining error. I don't think that that's actually helpful. For me, I'm aware enough that her putting that to the side doesn't make me just not think about it. I actually think that sports medicine doctors should always consider how nutrition is related to bone stress injuries. My doctor didn't even ask. She's just like, oh, you're fine. And I was like, okay, so I don't look like I have an eating disorder. I don't know. It bothered me because she didn't even ask about my eating. I actually talked to my friend, Dr. Emily Krause, who is at Stanford. She's actually, this is her area of specialty, bone health, and she actually did ask me if there were any even short periods of time where I felt like my feeling was really off. And when I think about this past year, actually when Nathan and I had to lay everybody off and was working every day in the bakery with just one volunteer, my feeling was not great. I would generally run, eat a muffin, have a coffee, and then go to work and not eat for several hours, despite the fact that my training load was very high. This was a 2-month period. And so what I talked with Emily about was the fact that she says that the science is really showing that even these short-term periods of undereating and underfueling can have a dramatic effect on bone health. So I think that the point of me bringing this up is, even if it's not something that you've been directed to look at, I think it's a really good opportunity when you're injured to take stock of what you are doing in your everyday life that could have contributed to your injury. For me, I want to make sure that my bone health is good when I return to run because I don't want to have another stress fracture. So I have to take these things into consideration and dive in deeper and really explore what that has meant for my bone health.